29th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the town of Newcastle. Before we get started tonight, I just wanted to recognize Harvey Bonaparte. Harvey was a longtime member of the zoning board, certainly made many other contributions to the town that we all live in, and he recently passed away.
I just want to put a little extra onto that. Harvey was a member of our board for 17 years, but he became a good friend of mine as well. And losing a friend is tough, and we will miss him. Thank you.
First item is we have an extension, Epstein. It's the first extension.
How much do they want, do you know?
I don't think he says.
Yeah,
Tom, do you know anything about Epstein and any reason for their extension?
Jackie, did
Is that, yeah? Oh, there's Amy.
Oh.
Hi,
Okay.
I'm Amy Epstein, this is our architect, he just joined Maynard Whale.
Hello, great to see you all.
Good. So if you could just briefly explain to us why you require the extension you do.
Sure, we initially went through the zoning appeals process last year, about 8-9 months ago. And before we finished the design process, we wanted to make sure we could secure the zoning variance to make sure that we could actually go through the project. Part of the project is relocating an existing septic field, and we've been in the process of permitting that septic field and testing the new location that was proposed. That process was slowed down over the winter due to the frozen ground conditions. We have since passed all our percolation tests and deep tests and have submitted the septic design to the Department of Health for approval. All of the comments we received from the engineering department have been responded to as of this week. When I drive in, but we are ready to go at this point. As soon as we have approval for the project, we're ready to start moving and getting into construction.
So usually extensions are 3 months, 6 months, depending on circumstances. What do you think is necessary in your particular case?
Assuming everything goes well with approvals, 3 months, but certainly would like to ask for 6 months just to be safe.
Okay.
We'll make a motion that we grant a 6-month extension.
I second.
Chairman Ken Cooper,
In favor?
Tony Giardina,
Aye.
Howard Dubs.
Aye.
Mike Nolan.
Aye.
Ron Genzeg.
Aye.
Thank you. You have your extension.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
You're welcome. Good evening.
good evening.
Next is Schneider, 374 Sorrel Street.
Good evening. I know this is old school. It's been a while since I've presented in this town. Okay, my name is Walter Nestler. I'm a licensed landscape architect working along with Mr. and Mrs. Schneider on their application for a variance to allow them to put a swimming pool in their property at 374 Sorrels. Okay, and thank you for the opportunity to hear the case. I'm not quite sure, does the board have an opportunity, does the board go to the site? I don't know if that's the procedure here.
We haven't been to the site in this instance, so
Great, okay. As you noticed, we made a rather extensive submission on this project. When we first made the application, we were made well. I knew there was going to be a front yard setback. The required is 75 feet. Where we were asking for, I believe, 54 feet due to the condition of the site. The site is approximately a bit over 3 acres. Now 10% of the site is graded to, let's say 10% or less. Eyeballing it, I would say good 60 to 70% of the site might be 10 to 15, and the remainder would exceed that. 60% of the site. I do have an aerial. I have handouts of this if you'd like, it's easier for you.
Why don't you take us through it?
Okay. Alright. So this is an aerial of the site, Saul's, okay? We basically go from elevation about 270 upwards to 502. Okay, that's over a span of I think 200 and maybe close to 300 feet. 2/3 of the site are wooded, deciduous, and evergreen. Property line is in black. The remaining site is grassy meadow. The house and garage are located in this location. Driveway comes off Saul's, splits. This property, from what I understand, is a farmhouse dating back to the early 1800s. At some point it was divided. The building that is the residence was a barn. That was converted, I believe, in the 70s as a residence. I understand you're the third owners?
I think fourth.
Fourth since then. So when the Schneiders purchased the property, obviously it's a beautiful piece of property. There's very inviting grassy meadow is off of their family room, living room, kitchen.
So just on that point, so you have 3 acres in which to work, and you've chosen to put it in the front yard as opposed to behind the house.
Okay.
Could you start with
That.
why you,
Well, again, I think it would be very apparent for the trip to the house that this, and I've been practicing for quite a long time, this particular site is just about the only site that makes sense to put a pool on this property without doing an incredible amount of damage, disturbance, and tree removals. In the initial reviews, I looked at all the comments, made several revisions, brought the site disturbance down a bit more. The other thing that triggered, apparently not only do we have one wetland buffer, but we're also in the New York City wetland buffer. Now, the project, totally the physical built form of our project is within the New York City 150 foot setback, but our site disturbance is under 5,000 square feet. Both the town and New York City will be accessed through, but just to access the site for construction. So, in that attempt, in our design, here we have the pool coming off the patio. In the review, we did not have a wall, we put the wall, 4-foot high wall into the slope to reduce the amount of disturbance. Okay, that's helpful, thank you. Alright. So again, from aerial, here we have the septic system up, septic field up in here, residence here, pool is here. So we're able to put the pool without too much difficulty. Now, as far as the front yard setback, as we mentioned, the house currently is non-conforming. 75, the building is 54, I'm sorry, 45.3. Okay, our pool is 54, so we're further back. And then the pool equipment originally was going to be located up a little higher, but I'm going to have to bring it back down in elevation just for the mechanical reasons. But it will be located in the area of disturbance. Now that's that in a nutshell. Now,
are you on a schedule in terms of meeting with the environmental board in terms of the wetlands aspect of the?
we had a review of letter, so I'm not aware of the procedures here. The review, the letter of review did mention that we have are in some wetland buffers, but no one had mentioned to me that the procedure, or I hadn't asked. But obviously, whatever's required, we will go before. This is the illustration of the site, the grading, and the wetback lines, setbacks of the wet lines. So the entirety of the pool is up in this area. And this is the down setback. Now, the wetland is, back to the aerial, is on the far side of Sarles. So Sarles, in fact, goes through the wetland or the wetland buffer. So the buffer is already compromised to begin with. Not to say that's right or wrong, but that's the existing condition. So, and just
So the wetlands are
here.
below, right,
Yes, I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at the mailing site plan.
Yeah.
There's about 4 properties, 2 very large properties. I think the one encompasses the entire wetland. And then the other property is up on the hillside above them. And then there's more, several lots in about this size that are in that area. I understand one of the neighbors did submit a letter of support for the project.
yes, they have, the Morels.
Okay, not quite sure how much more technical, might be easier if you had questions to ask me that I might respond to.
May I ask you a question?
Please.
We've had different submissions here with different setbacks.
Correct.
What is the accurate setback of the pool and opening and the accurate setback of the pool equipment to be?
Right now, currently, it should be the set that you have in front of you,
So
with the wall.
with the March 5th date on it?
It would have the-
Showing 51 feet?
It is 54 feet, which is the February 21st date.
Alright, then what is the March 5th submission we have?
I'm sorry, that's the revision here. Yes, this did not have the wall. Here's the wall.
So March 5th is the accurate copy that we're working off of.
Yeah, well, there was another submission March 5th, which basically illustrated the setbacks. Is that the drawing?
Says setback analysis.
Yes,
so,
okay,
you know, I wrote you a denial letter based on the February submittal.
yes.
We need to revise that based on your March submittal. So you're asking for 51 feet to the pool edge from the front yard?
Pool edge is 50 for the set that we have. No, actually, the February 21st set was the revised set based upon comments. I submitted a setback just to illustrate the setbacks if we did not have the wetland. My understanding, you'd be better versed at explaining why the setback tripled. Normally in a site, this location, we were under the understanding it's a 75-foot setback. But due to the wetlands, it became a 225-foot setback.
The wetlands do not apply. It's the fact that you're putting a pool in a front yard.
Okay.
That's where the 3 times the setback, 3 times the area comes from.
Okay, so the March 5th submission, there were 2 drawings. The one shows 75, and the other one would be a comparative with the 225. So yes, we would be able to build a pool on this property to the proper setback, but it would be 50 feet above where we propose now. It would be up in the hillside.
Sir, if I may one more time?
Sure.
The wetland setback is 150 feet, not
New
the
York City, yes.
Right, not 225.
No.
That's the setback based on the requirement of a pool in a front yard.
Or my correction, I stand corrected, yes, then it was a setback from the requirement of a pool in the front yard. Triggered that 200 and.
So that would be a compliant pool location, is what you're
Yes,
saying.
do you have these on the screen? Can these be brought up? The March 5th drawings? Yes, I gave those 2 drawings afterwards as an analysis, to a comparative analysis. So right now, we can put a pool, but it is up in this area. And if we're able to pull up the March 5th drawings, which you're referring, so we can put a pool here. The question is, it doesn't make sense. there'd be so much destruction and disturbance. I'd be taking down at least 50 trees. Okay, we have an elevation in that area of at least 20 feet in that envelope of great difference. We're 50 feet from this elevation to the mean elevation in here. It's just incredibly destructive.
I'm familiar with the
Yeah.
site, yes.
Yeah. I mean, yes, we could put a pool without coming before you, but it's just absolutely crazy.
What will stand between the pool and the roadway? Is the pool at a similar elevation to the
The
roadway?
pool now approximately 20 to 25 feet above the roadway, depending upon where you are on the road.
Okay,
So as you're coming up or down Sarles, you currently see a grassy meadow. You'll still see a grassy meadow because the pool is in grade, you won't see anything. So literally visually, nothing will change, there will be some regrading, but it would just be grassy meadow. We did have to add a wall, 4-foot high wall, which would be in keeping to the other stone walls on the property, just in order to reduce the area of disturbance. Which I think we'd all agree is a good thing. I hope that answered.
You still didn't give me the specific number of the setback, but we can work towards that. Cause we have
Number
to,
of the setback, I'm sorry. The one drawing does show the two on the March 5th, correct?
I think we've heard two numbers, 54 and 51,
Oh, I'm
right?
sorry.
And so it's a question of,
This
Is the
drawing, yes,
pool-
is the correct, 54. Okay,
54 is correct.
yes. The house currently is 45, back of coping would be 54, and that's on the March 21st drawing sheet 1 of 9. That's what we were requesting. Now, we did an original submission before that, which did not have the wall.
sir, with all due respect, we're still wrestling with the fact that you have 51 listed on the latest plan set March 5th. Is that an erroneous number, the
Yes,
51?
that is incorrect.
Okay, so 54 is the number.
54 is the number. To back of coping.
And the pool equipment is,
It's further back than does it show on that drawing, or is it on this drawing? Originally, I did not have it on my original set, on the revised, I believe I put it. But I can give it to you,
it was 85 feet originally set back.
yeah, and I think when I scaled it off, somebody visually scaled it off, it was about 95. Or 91, it was within close to what you had done. But at this point, again, as I mentioned, we may be bringing that back down a bit, just because of mechanical reasons. Okay, and the location we're talking about, right now we have the equipment here. We're thinking of putting it down here just to get it within 2 or 3 feet of, you can't really be more than 2 or 3 feet above the elevation of the pool. And we don't wanna put it below the pool because then we're, down in areas even closer to the road.
Sir, this board will be granting you a specific number to
Yes.
place this at. So you need to instruct us where you want this to be, and that's they're not gonna give you a variable. It's gonna be your closest point.
I would be very happy to, based upon our meeting today, I would be very happy to come back and give you an exact revision showing the new location of the pool equipment due to the mechanical reasons. And we're also going to, currently there is propane tanks, which you propose also to bring down and bury the 500-gallon tank into our area of disturbance. Right now, there's 2 tanks for the generator. We need to increase the volume for the pool heater, and we'd like to bury that tank.
from what you know about the neighborhood, are there any other pools that are in the front yard?
Not to out any of the neighbors, but I did to do an aerial. And as you can imagine, those properties surrounding it do have pools. So it's an activity that's certainly in keeping.
They have pools, are they in the front yard or are they in the
Well,
rear yard?
from the aerials, it would imagine they're in the rear yard or the side yards. But again, these houses are substantially larger and properties are much bigger. So I think they could have the setback. It's very difficult to tell what yard is front and back, they're just very, very large.
The one neighbor who wrote to affirm the application where are they located?
They are actually in the original farmhouse. So they, as you're looking at Sarles, the original farmhouse is here,
Okay,
and the barn is here. When the subdivision was made just pretty much right down the, they share a common driveway entrance.
I see.
Again, the farmhouse is about pretty much the same setback as the current house, the Snyder's home.
And where is the next closest neighbor? Up on the hill?
Up here, and I believe the other neighbors way back here. I can get a larger aerial, but
No, it's okay,
I-
okay,
I'm not accustomed to working in neighborhoods of this size, to be honest with you. Properties, they're enormous properties. This is than the surrounding neighbors.
so just in terms of process. So you have not made, have you made an application that has been received by the environmental control
There
board?
was a review, was there not, by a conservation board? There was a letter from a conservation.
Based on your application that
Yes.
came to the building
My
department?
initial, yes,
Okay,
and
Tom, is that something, would you ever referred that? Is that how that happens?
They would have been referred to the environmental coordinator to have a discussion of the requirements
Right,
and then sent by the environmental coordinator to the environmental review board for analysis. I don't think they've gone through the board as of yet.
no, we have not.
okay.
And I'm not sure which chicken becomes before which egg.
No,
in
we're
this
gonna
process.
tell you right now, so our expectation is that this board now understands your application. You now would need to approach the environmental review board, get on their calendar for their review, because they will be reviewing the aspect of the wetlands. And then you would come back to this board, presumably after this other review, and an indication that they find it acceptable, what you're attempting to do as it relates to wetlands.
Understood. That, I mean, obviously it makes sense. Obviously, if there is an issue on that board, we
Once
will
in a
not be
while it
coming back
makes
to you.
sense, not often, but
Well, you know, today's day in the world, I've never had a project where I had two setbacks for wetland, to be honest with you. But it is what it is, and we're willing to do whatever is required. I will certainly revise the drawing, you know, to clarify some of the questions. I have been practicing for quite some time, and I would be willing to bet my next winning lottery ticket that there is no better site on this property to put a pool. I'm not doing this because we want a ridiculous reason to put a pool somewhere. They're really, and I would challenge any licensed professional to show me a better site. And then they could have the winning lottery ticket.
okay. Are any other comments or questions
I think we
by this
covered it.
board?
And I just wanna make it clear, cause I think there were a few comments today about having two wetland setbacks.
Yes.
My understanding, and don't quote me on this is where the environmental review board comes in and the environmental coordinator. I believe that the 150-foot that you referred to as the New York City wetland buffer, I don't know that the New York City wetland buffer applies here, but the town of Newcastle, this is in an environmental protection overlay district,
Yes.
which happens to have a 150-foot buffer anyway. So instead of being 100 and 150, it's 150. The effect is still
Okay.
150, but this is something that, you know, we recommend speak to the environmental coordinator, environmental review board, and that's what the chairman was suggesting.
Yes, I understand the New York City buffer comes in as part of, because it's in the reservoir watershed area,
Mhm.
so therefore it triggered a rather large. That's it. The Schneiders are here if you'd like to ask them any questions.
I think this board has the information it needs at this point.
So I would coordinate the application with the conservation board with
Mr. Corelli, Dennis
Mr.
Corelli.
Could I just say something? I'm sorry.
If you come up and speak into the microphone, please, thank you.
First of all, thank you all for meeting with us and thank you for the work you all do in sort of preserving the neighborhood that we moved here because we love the neighborhood. We've lived in Westchester, I've lived in Westchester my entire life, basically, I grew up in Briarcliff. And we raised our family down in Edgemont where we lived for 25 years. We moved up here when we became empty nesters, and we bought this house really as a place for our kids and our grandchildren to come and hang out, and building a pool was always part of that plan. And we tested out the house when COVID happened. Our 3 adult children moved back with us, and it worked, and we love the neighborhood, and we've done a lot of improvements to the house, and we've always done those improvements with the foresight to really preserve the neighborhood and preserve the look of the house. It's a converted horse barn, and we put in we took out an old decrepit fence, we put in a new split rail fence that went with the neighborhood. We've taken out shrubbery that was dead, and we put in new shrubbery, but we didn't want to make it look manicured, we wanted to make it look natural in keeping with the environment. We've redone the roof, we've redone the chimney, and the neighbors have all been very complimentary about how we've improved the house and improved the neighborhood. So we appreciate what you're all doing here. The only thing I wanted to comment on was I understand technically this is the side yard. When we first saw that on the thing, we were shocked. The front yard, right? Because we always think of it as the side yard. And I think that my guess is part of that is because the new setbacks are so much further back that if we had a house that was conforming to the current setbacks, this truly would be in front of it. But based on where the house is right now, it's right to the side of it. And our goal here has always been to have a pool that fits into the landscape, not to make the landscape fit around the pool. We want to preserve the look of the house. We want to preserve the look we want to preserve our views across the meadow. We want to preserve the look of the neighborhood. As Walter said, this is the only spot. If you went up that hill, you'd have to take out a whole host of trees. I think of the house. I divide the property into 4 quadrants. Well, there's the east half, which is all wooded and very high grade, and that's where the house backs up into. So there's nothing on that side of it that we could put the house. The house occupies the north quadrant, northwest quadrant, and this meadow is sort of the east, southwest quadrant, and that's where that meadow is. And most of that's very hilly, and really the only area that's sort of flat that the pool would sort of fit in naturally, I think, is where we're asking it to be put. So I know it sounds weird, front yard. I would never put a pool in a front yard or anything that looked like a front yard. So I think that just it's the name because of it's got to be the name for the zoning purposes, but nobody would call that a front yard just being in the house and looking at it. So
Okay.
Thank you for your
Thank you for your comments.
Yep.
Motion to adjourn for.
I make a motion that we continue this matter to a subsequent meeting when the applicant returns after meeting with the Environmental Review Board.
I'll second that.
Chairman Ken Cooper,
Aye.
Tony Giardina,
Aye.
Howard Dubs,
Aye.
Mike Nolan,
Aye.
Ron Genzeg.
Thank you for your time.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
I make a motion this board adopt the meeting minutes for the March 8th meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Chairman Ken Cooper,
Aye.
Tony Giardina,
Aye.
Howard Dubs,
Aye.
Mike Nolan,
Aye.
Ron Genzeg.
We're off.